On this video that I forgot to get intro footage at the lab, we work on and test some games in a top-of-the-line PC with parts ranging from 2008 to 2010. Now switching on my recently made light stand, I made a tutorial on how to make it in the video linked in the card above if you're interested in that. This was a computer sent to the channel by a friend with a couple of other PCs from different periods. The last one reviewed here was the Box PC, a computer that used to work from a cardboard box sporting a Pentium D and a Geforce 7200 GS. You can check it out on the card here or wait to click on the link at the end of this video. While you're there, you should go ahead and check out my friend's channel. He's a talented photographer, musician, and an overall nice guy. Here we have an iconic NZXT case with a configuration that used to be the object of dreams to me. An Intel i7-920 with 6 gigs of Corsair dominated DDR3 memory in triple channel, an Asus Rampage 2 Extreme, and a very beefy 1000 watt Corsair modular PSU. This came with a word of warning that it wasn't functioning properly. It was said that it's unstable, and this is the main reason why my friend abandoned it. But I'm optimistic. I'm hoping that after we clear all of this up and install a new OS, it will work, and I really hope it does because it's the most powerful PC I have here in the lab, and I'm hoping I can put it to good use while I'm here and maybe can become a capture machine for gameplay from other PCs and video games. Now that I'm inspecting it, I can see there's a front fan installed here in addition to the back exhaust fan. There's also a place to mount a fan on the side panel that I don't usually like. I rather have the airflow from the front to the back, but with the way this case is designed, there's a lot of stuff blocking airflow. There's all the metal from the drive bay besides the front panel restriction. So it's probably a good idea to have a fan mounted on the side panel. First, let's try to organize this. There's a bunch of loose stuff in here. I love how people use these old PCs as storage units once they're not working anymore. So let's get all the clutter from inside here and start to organize this to maximize airflow. On a build like this, instability can be caused by almost anything. A bad cable, a bad electrical component, a short coming from the case for a component. Something to keep an eye out is if you have multiple modular PSUs, their cables are not interchangeable. The pinouts can be different, so you gotta keep them separated. Now that we cleared the main cabin, let's start to do some cable management. As you can see, there isn't any room for it, but luckily I have been doing this since before case manufacturers decided this was important, so I'm sure we can find a way. There's an opening on the back panel that apparently is a cutout for the PSU support. Conveniently, it's exactly what we need for the CPU power cable, and we're going to use that. For the motherboard power cable, we can use this weird cutout. I have no idea what was originally intended for, and it's a tight fit, but eventually I got the connector through, and removing the memory modules, I can plug the routed motherboard power cable back in. The GTX 580 that will go in there requires power, so we're also going to route the power cables for that. It would be ideal to route them through the back and out just under the drive bay, but there isn't any planned space for that. Now that I look at this, I can see somebody already made a cutout on the drive bay, and I can see why. The motherboard SATA ports all face the drive bay, and there wouldn't be a way to access them if it wasn't for this homemade cutout. The video card on this build is an NVIDIA GTX 580. It's a pretty big graphics card, and it barely fits this case. This case is from around 2006. Obviously it's not ideal for this build. Components barely fit and there is little to no airflow. But I still think it looks cool, and we're going to get to the end of this. The makeshift cutout that was done on the drive bay is going to be useful for all the SATA cables and front I/O connectors. Unfortunately, the PCI Express power cables are not long enough. If you have watched this far and haven't liked the video or subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that right now. It helps a lot. Turning the beast on for the first time, I went through a quick BIOS check and started to install Windows. Right away, I can tell that the chipset is really hot, so I use a little fan here to help it cool off a bit. That just gives me peace of mind. After installing the OS, I realized the processor was reaching upwards of 50 degrees Celsius on idle. That's around 124 degrees Fahrenheit, so this needs to be taken care of. The memory we got here is a 6GB triple channel Corsair Dominator kit. The memory kit looks awesome with the black fins, but it's not quite enough RAM for 2020. So let's address those issues right now, installing another 6GB of RAM and a better cooling solution that was sent to the channel by my good friend, the Turtle. The i7-920 was released in 2008 at the same time Intel released its enthusiast CPU, the i7-965. The only difference between the i7-920 and the 965 is the core clock. They sport the same 8 threads and the same amount of cache at 9 MB. This made the i7-920 a killer deal at $320 versus $999 for the i7-965. And they could still be overclocked. Of course the 965 can be overclocked as well, but you get what I mean, right? After installing the new cooler, we got a much more palatable 32 degrees Celsius or 89 degrees Fahrenheit. The problem is, the blue screens my friend talked about started happening. What could be causing this is an issue I have ran into quite a few times, and that is the RAM memory not being set to the proper voltage in the BIOS. Many DDR3 kits need 1.65 volts to run, and usually the BIOS automatically sets them to 1.5 volts. So if you're getting blue screens, make sure to put this one on your troubleshooting checklist. To figure out what the standard voltage for your DIMMs is, you can use software like CPU-Z or look for it on the sticker on your DIMMs. For the gaming capabilities of this 12-year-old beast, first game I tried to run was Crysis. Crysis is a game from 2007. And for the time it was extremely demanding. It was a benchmark 2 for ages, so much so that the recent Crysis remaster has its own benchmark 2. For this test, we are sticking to the original Crysis, and no surprises to anyone, it does run Crysis, it does so very well. At this time, I would be running a 16:10 monitor at a lower resolution than the Full HD we are seeing today, but even for modern standards, no problems here. The game runs in the 40 to 50 FPS range, occasionally dropping to the mid-30s in more demanding areas. Seeing what this PC can do, I wasn't going to waste time on games from its time period anymore, and I went straight to modern games, and shockingly, this thing runs everything. Well, almost everything. Here we have Witcher 3. Witcher 3 was released in 2015. It's a very intense and beautiful action RPG that is still being played today with expansions and re-releases for contemporary gaming consoles like the Switch. And as you can see, we can run it with this 10-year-old plus beast. Watch Dogs 2 is a game from Ubisoft, and Ubisoft is known for disregarding older hardware. But still, we can run it on this computer. Over and over again, we see that the i7-920 from 2008 is still being sub-autolized with the GTX 580, a top-of-the-line card from 2010. Now, playing Watch Dogs 2 in this setup is not the best experience. The game is from the end of 2016 and poses its own set of challenges to this system here, like the amount of video memory necessary for textures. I'm happy we can run it though. Borderlands 3 was released just last year in 2019, and surprisingly the old system here runs it just barely at low settings on Full HD. The type of graphics used on this game, the more cartoonish style of characters and scenery, makes it a bit less demanding than other titles tested. So nice surprise, we run this recent and modern AAA game in a playable 30 to 40 FPS, and even though I did lose the screen captures of the combat scene, it didn't change much from that. As for a one and only disappointment, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I told you, Ubisoft does not make a point on supporting older systems in their releases. It's a shame because we can see from how the other games look that this system is quite capable. And this is not even the newest game here, being from 2017. What happens here is that this game requires way too much memory to store textures. So when it can't do that on 1.5GB video card, the textures come out black, or they're just not there, literally, rendering the game unplayable even at 1280 by 720, scaled down to 50%. Or is it? So that was it for the original configuration of the lab PC. Stay tuned for testing with different parts and different games. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Click on the bell for notifications if you would like that, and I'll see you next time. I just realized I didn't use the footage in which I cleaned and repasted the GTX 580 in a fruitless attempt to lower its temperature. But Oh well.